Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Ohio Virtual Academy Music Appreciation Podcast. My name is Jeremy England. I am one of 4 music teachers at OHVA, and I am joined by my colleague, Miss Daphne Chek. How are you today, Daphne?
I'm really doing good. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm well, thank you. It is Friday afternoon. We were just talking before the show. It's a good time to always record and just kind of relax and end the week well. And we know that you guys are all probably getting tired of hearing us. There's like a shelf life, I think, to our voices. So we're going to bring a shelf life. We're going to bring something else in to like mix it up. And I have asked my friend to come on. We went to school together. His name is Christopher Jackson. He is a tenor singer teacher in Chicago, right, Christopher?
Yes.
All right. How are you today?
I'm wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. We're going to just talk about music. We just, I was telling you before the, I was going to say before the service, like it was the church service, but before the episode, just talking about, we just like to hear from professionals that aren't us, people who are very talented in their very specific area, and just kind of your experience there and your experience just as a musician overall, because this world of music is much bigger than probably we have any amount of time to present as teachers.
So
big.
Yeah,
a few months.
I would just like to say, since you guys know each other from college, at some point I'm going to ask for an embarrassing story about Jeremy. Because I feel like that's the only appropriate thing, right? Like, I'm supposed to ask those questions.
I hope he doesn't have too many embarrassing stories. Yeah.
Oh, well, then I'm going to go. I can't. No, just teasing.
Yeah, I can really tell, right? Shy. Yeah. You're already like jumping in like you're on this show. I love it. Okay.
That's so perfect.
So we did. Christopher and I went to school together. Now, those of you who are older than us or roughly the same age, you know that like going to college is kind of like we were acquaintances in a lot of ways. We sang together in some areas, but it's just cool. Like you go to college, you do this degree or whatever, and then you expand out from there and people start to go and do these amazing things. And we're kind of at the age where like we're starting to take root into like our careers, right? We're like starting to be established and become like real prominent voices, I guess. We're like, we know what we're doing now. What, like 10 years after college or whatever it is, 7 years, I don't even know.
Or we fake it better at this point.
That's there it
like
is.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like we know
hide our
how to
imposter
like
syndrome
sneak
better.
through the vines there.
Yeah. And so through social media, which is people don't like a lot, but I like it because I can follow people like Christopher and people through college. I can see what they're doing in their careers and see, just like kind of root for people and say, hey, I went to school with that guy, like, and then eventually 7 years afterwards, invite him to come on to our podcast. So it's pretty awesome. And of course, Daphne, this is part of our ongoing effort to highlight different voices, right, than our own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because as you say, people are sick of hearing us at this point. We need to get some other folks in here.
That's right. Okay, so Christopher, before we even talk about you, like we give you a little bit of highlight of you as a musician, but how would you introduce yourself outside of being a musician?
Outside of being a musician, actually a really good question, because we get so wrapped up in ourselves sometimes all the time as musicians. So sometimes you actually do need a question like this to kind of step back and like, who am I? Outside of the world of these music notes. I am very much a family and friends person. I'm very connected to all of my family. I love spending time with anyone who's close. I love to run for the purposes of music. So I've gotten into outside activities, and this little bump in weather has been amazing because I can leave from the standardized gym machines and actually go outside and smell the fresh air.
What a concept.
I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you for this break. So I do love to be outside and just to get air and to enjoy sights and do a little bit of exercising. And that's mostly my outside of musician life is usually that.
A family friendly runner is what you
yes I love that, a family friendly runner.
That's amazing.
So now like you are a musician. That's probably why this question is so hard to answer, and you've spent a lot of your life so far, or at least professional adult life, as a musician. So what is your professional involvement as a musician?
First of all, I call myself a teaching artist, and I maintain, it's gone down because of the pandemic, but I usually maintain about a 50-student voice studio. And outside of that, I sing with 3 professional groups in Chicagoland area, as well as maintain a church position as a section leader and soloist. So it's kind of a melting pot of things.
Wow.
And I try to throw in at least a couple of shows a week. Oh my goodness. A year.
Okay. Wow.
Oh boy. I mean, if you want to do more stuff, because first of all, you already don't sound like you sleep. You said you have 50 students plus a church gig plus just professional performance gigs.
Yes. This
Wow.
So this past year has been quite the vacation, actually. It's weird to say in the middle of a pandemic, but I remember when it all started, I was just like, I didn't realize how exhausted I was, vocally, physically, until everything stopped, and then I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? But you kind of just flow, you kind of go into the flow, and you just roll with the river sometimes. You just flow, and you don't realize, how many things are piling on each other. And you're like, oh yeah, I have an extra, 2 hours in my week. Sure, right. I'll come audition for this and that. And then next thing you know, there's that slot. And then you're like, what? Wait, there's a weekend? Wait, what? What day of the week is it?
Oh my gosh.
And so, yes, I keep myself quite busy, not always not always great for myself, but it keeps me going. It keeps me going. I'm a person who I can't stop. Mm-hmm. I have to, I work, weirdly enough, oddly enough, I work better when I'm every day doing something.
Mm-hmm. Some kind of productivity that you can say, hey, I got something off the to-do list today, or I added to the universe, like something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is an interesting aspect. Maybe we can get into this a little bit later. So you're a professional, would you say a teaching artist, right? That's what you call yourself. You maintain this studio of 50 people. Like there's an entrepreneurial side to all of this, right? Like you gotta, so you're this musician, this singer, this teacher, but then you gotta like run a business, right? And so maybe we'll get into some of that, like the underside of professional musicianship that you might not think about as a solo person.
Yes.
So, okay, so you got to this point, you're professional, you're good. I guess, how'd you get there? What's your background in music? When did you start? How'd you become a singer, all that stuff?
So I started out singing a long time ago in church, and I was actually really, really, really shy. I remember my parents and grandparents forcing me to sing solos with the children's choir, and I'm like, but I don't want to sing. And they're like, but you need to sing. And I was dancing at the same time, so I would do praise dance, and then I was also in the children's choir. And so dancing, I feel like it was so much easier. I didn't have to, didn't have to worry about a shaky voice, and I could just, the music would start, and then you just feel the music on the inside, like any musician does. And so I always gravitated towards dance. Even in high school, I did talent shows, and I would always choose dancing over singing. My mom was like, people want to hear you sing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to dance. So I did that for many years. Elementary school, I picked up alto saxophone, actually, and I was in band and, standard music classes in elementary school, so we sang anyway. We got to middle school. I was in the concert choir that actually met zero period, so like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And then I was in band as well there. And then I kind of actually kept the same kind of thing through to high school. High school, I just, of course, like most high schoolers, add on 1,000 other ensembles, show choir, piano. She's like, yep.
I felt that deeply.
Yeah.
it was a lot. I was actually thinking about that earlier, and I'm like, oh my goodness, parents, I'm so sorry, but thank you for driving me literally everywhere. And then I started to, I never really took it serious as in a profession type of thought. It was fun and it was easy to me. And so I'm like, okay, well, the next one, I'll just keep going next year, add on, maybe do a competition or something. And I loved it actually in high school because the way our schedule was set up, everybody who was in band, choir, piano, we had 6-period lunch. And so the last 4 periods of the day were all music classes.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it was like, everybody was just like, okay, another class. And once we got to lunch, we're like, yes, it's all music from here on out.
Yeah.
For the first few hours of the day, we're just like, oh, come on. Yes, we have to learn, but we just want to sing and we just want to like play, and just be music students. And so, yeah, I went on to do that and started doing the musicals, and that's when I started to get the bug a little bit to do it more, I should say. And I started to lose a little bit of the performance anxiety, and it started to feel a little more natural.
Yeah.
And then I carried that on through to college, to BJSU, and did my graduate studies at Northern Illinois University. And now I'm in the city, the little big city.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's so. I do want to point out, like you kept talking about like, adding on stuff, and people who are not like even music majors in college don't realize how many classes we take, because like all of your ensembles are like 1 credit, right? You spend just as much time, but you get 1 credit hour. So you'd be taking like 18 semester hours as a undergrad music major, but it'd be like 12 classes or something stupid like that.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's funny how we've trained that, like even you're talking like all the way back through middle school, how like you just keep adding ensembles on and on and on and on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that seems so consistent among musicians, because everything you were saying, I was so relating to, because that was that was me in high school, and just constantly adding another performance, or I'll take on this, or I'll take on that, or sure, I'll help with the middle school jazz band, things like that, and things just keep adding on. So and then but it does lead you to where you are, clearly, because you're where you are.
And I say this to all my students too. A lot of them, I mean, they're in the same mindset that I was. It's nothing to them. It's just, they're just busy.
Yeah.
They're just busy. And, at least the ones that I know for sure are going to college, I'm like, I'm going to tell you, to be honest, you're probably in the best setup for yourself right now. If you weren't doing anything and all of a sudden you were going off to major in music, it's going to be a total culture shock for you, because all of a sudden you're going to have this boatload of things and you're not going to know how to manage any of it. And so I always tell them, like, just know, I know you're busy right now. And you're like, yes, I have this rehearsal, and then my parents want me to go do this. And I'm like, it's not going to change when you get to college. You're just going to go into adulthood just a little bit, but it's the same thing, just different people, different groups, different school.
That's so very true. I did want to ask something though. When you were talking, you kind of talked about like being a little bit shy as a youngster. Do you think music was, at your young age, do you think that was how you kind of related to the world, and like the thing that really kind of drew you out of being shy as a child?
Absolutely. I still remember my elementary school music teacher, Miss Sams, and she was just so she was just so involved in her classroom teaching, and so she always gave us a reason to want to play the bells or play the xylophone or play the recorder, and it was the easy part of the day. It was just like, we can breathe and just enjoy sounds and not look at a book. I mean, I guess we did have the books, but not words, and have to read and listen to lectures, and it just allowed you to kind of feel like yourself.
Yeah.
And you leave the room and you're like, oh, music class is over. And you go back into your little box again.
Yeah. So you think,
I love that.
Yeah. What's the moment So we had somebody on here a few months ago. She is a teacher, but not a music teacher. She teaches. She plays piano professionally, like for churches and stuff still. But she went for piano major, got in the middle of it, and just did not want to do it anymore. You know, like it's like we see a lot of music majors go to school, and they're like, it's not what I wanted it to be. And so we talking to her about that, like this moment that you have to decide to be a music teacher. There's a couple, or a musician. It's like mine was junior year of high school. I said I want to be a music teacher. I knew that's what I was going to do, and then like I didn't have very many moments in college where I said, is this even worth continuing on? But I know a lot of people do, because it's a total culture shock for like I want to do this. It's fun.
It still is.
Right. It turns in from like the woohoo, it's after lunch, like it's time to have music, to like your whole life is music.
Right.
A job. Yes. So what was your moment? Like where do you think you were like, okay, or like, you know, maybe it's not something grand or whatever, but like it could just be.
I think it was probably my senior. So it was my senior year of high school. I actually do know this. And we did, anybody who took private lessons, we did a big showcase at the end of senior year. And I don't know if either of you have been to Memorial Hall in Cincinnati, but it's the building next to Music Hall. And it's kind of like a baby recital hall. It probably seats probably like 1,000 people, I think, maybe about 700 at the least. And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's if you imagine any type of symphony hall, imagine like a little baby version. And so we had, I mean, none of us had ever been there. We had been to music hall, but, you know, we got the information that we were going to perform there. So like, cool, you know, high schoolers, you don't really think about where you're just like,
right.
Okay, awesome. I'll tell my ride and we'll be there.
Right.
And so I went in and I'm just like, okay, well, this is like gorgeous, awesome. And I sang my piece. I think we may have rehearsed, but I really don't remember the rehearsal. And I sang my piece, and actually sang Nina from the 24 Italian Songs and Arias. That was my college audition song too. And so there's this ascending line. I think it's just a G major ascending line in the middle of this minor. And I remember singing up the entire scale, and I remember hearing my voice wrap around this auditorium, and I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is magic. And I just remember leaving the stage and I'm like, I have to sing in places like this. Like, I have to do this. I'm like, everything up to then was just like, it was fun. I think I had already been accepted to BG. My brother had gone there, so we knew that I wanted to do something in music, but my parents didn't really know the voice route. They, my brother was in percussion, and so we were like, okay, well, we know BG, so let's apply. And I was in, and so I don't think I really thought still past that moment. So it really wasn't like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna, what options do you have? And then that happened maybe a couple months later, and it was like it was a clicking moment. I'm like, yes.
I know. I got goosebumps when you were telling that story, because I can tell. I know exactly. Like, I know that feeling when you hear your instrument project out and just like wrap around you. Yeah, I know. Man, that's good stuff.
It was so magical.
It's like you didn't know until that moment that you had the ability to put that into the universe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Because I mean,
100%.
I feel you on that again, because like I knew I wanted to be a music teacher at a really young age. I'm weird. Like at 13, I knew, but I never really thought about it until I heard myself play a 4-mallet marimba solo when I was 16. And when I did that, when I heard me play, that was the moment when I was like, oh, dang, I could do this forever. I could do this forever. So I totally related to that.
So you went to college for music performance originally. So you like went right out of the gate. Like,
so there was a little bit of a crossover. So I actually did originally want to be a music educator. I wanted to go into music education. but I think it was mostly because I admired my choral director so much.
Yeah.
Most high schools like, well, I want to be exactly like
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
They're like amazing, and in our eyes, they're perfect. It's like you're like a walking goddess to me. Like I love you. I actually still talk to her to this day. She tried to get me a job when she retired, and I was like, she actually wrote me, I think, junior year in college. She was like, where are you at in your studies? And I was like, so I'm actually going into like opera performance now. She was like, Chris. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. I know we had this plan when I left and I was going to come back and take over your position. But my attack to talk to my mom about this, and she's like, you weren't ready. You left college.
Yeah.
You were not ready to come, back to Cincinnati and take over anything like that. You were still a kid. And I'm like, you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Time and place for everything, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, so you had another decision to make. So you had high school to college, like I'm going for music, and then you had the magical moment. And then you get through 4 or 5, however long it took you years through college, like music performance and all that crazy stuff that you got to do with that. And then at some point in there, you said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go for more school. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to audition again, and I'm going to keep going through this punishment. Like how did that decision come about to get your master's?
Man. So I took a year off. I left out of school, and I knew I wasn't going to be coming back to BG because I'm very much a person who gets comfortable.
Yeah.
I think it's changed now, but I was still in a very young mindset, and I was comfortable. So I'm like, if I go to grad school, I'm just going to reapply to BG. Yeah. I'd seen like other people had done it. So I'm like, oh, I could just come back here. And I remember my voice teacher saying, he's like, as much as we'd love you to come back, you need to go off and you need to expand. Because he knew I was like complacent. I was like, I could stay here forever. I'm comfortable. I don't have to worry about the world.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I'm like, well, I have no idea what I'm going to do. My parents don't really know, they support me to the T, and everything, but they don't know about the classical world, and they do their best with, researching and supporting me, but, so I have to always accept that. But, so I was like, well, I'm going to come home. And so that summer I went back home, and I lived with my parents and actually shared a room with my little brother, who was, I think, a sophomore in high school at that point or something like that. And it was probably the most like depressive moment in my life. I was seeing people, go off and get their, huge big jobs in corporate America. And, even saw some of my musician friends that were going off and, getting their placements in schools, and, singers who were, moving over to Europe or moving to New York. And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what to do. Somebody tell me. And so about halfway through that year that I took off, you kind of come to this moment where you're like, I have got to get out of here. Yeah. I love my parents. I love everybody, but nope, I cannot be 23 going on 24 sharing a room with my high school little brother. I don't want to be, quiet coming in the house because I don't want to wake anybody. And so it was just like, I have to leave. I have to do something. And so I started to get back into singing. I don't think I had barely sung in like 6 months after I graduated. I kind of remembered rep, but it was very much just I worked. I actually worked for my uncle and my father. My uncle owned a pediatric practice, and then my dad was the administrator. So I had worked there throughout college too, but just in between breaks and such. Yeah. And so I was doing that. I was just working, and I was like, all right, something has to shake. I have to go. And I knew I wanted to be near Chicago, but not in Chicago. At that point, I had only spent time in Bowling Green, which is as small as a pea, and and then Cincinnati, which compared to Chicago is the same, as small as a pea. So I'm like, oh no, I'm living in the city. I said, nope. There is no way I'm applying for schools in the city. So I literally Googled music programs near Chicago. Had no idea what I was looking for. And I think there was a couple, of course, like the state schools. They had Northern Illinois University, Western Illinois, I think Millikan popped up. So it's a couple of schools, and so I was like, all right, fine. NIU, Northern Illinois University. Let's see what they are. And I'm like researching, just like, okay. And so I applied to there, and then a school in Georgia. My family comes from there. So I'm like, well, if I go to Atlanta, I'll be near family. And then I applied for Oakland in Michigan because I had new people there. Still in my comfort zone.
Yep.
Because I'm going to apply to places of people I knew.
Yep.
And Chicago, or Northern Illinois, was the only place I didn't really know people. I had a couple of family members here, but we hadn't really talked. They're kind of distant cousins. So I know those people around, but it was more of a, this is really where I'm about to put my eggs. If I'm gonna grow, if I'm gonna do this, come on. And so I applied, auditioned at all these places. It was crazy. I actually emailed my voice teacher from undergrad. It's probably been like 8 months later at this point. I'm like, hey, I know we haven't spoken in months, but I remember you saying if I ever need a voice lesson to come in, I really need a voice lesson. So I drove up to BJ one weekend and had a lesson with my voice teacher, and letting him know, everything that's going on, and so he was more than happy to assist. And then I auditioned at all these schools, and NIU ended up giving me the most money. Yeah. They practically covered my tuition. And so the first degree, the instant choice, I was like, what? Never mind, choice is made. So that was really the deciding factor in where I was going. And so, I ended up going and actually did my performance certificate first. I didn't really know if I was going to teach. I knew I had done it a little bit on and off, starting with like the vocal ped classes in undergrad. And so I was like, okay, this is like cool, but I wasn't confident enough. I didn't even like my sound yet. And I'm like, if I don't even like my own sound of my voice, there's no way I can try to teach people to like their own. Yeah. And so I steered away from that. So I was like, I'm going to get a performance certificate. I don't know what this thing is, but it's not a master's. So let's see what this thing does. And like a year into that, I started teaching more. And it was like, it was up from there. And I ended up staying there to get my my master's degree. Wow. Because my voice teacher, he turned everything around for me. I was kind of so lost vocally. You take out so many habits when you're in undergrad, and you're trying to figure out so many things, and so the focus isn't there. And so when I got here where I didn't know anybody, and the only thing I had to do was find a job, find students, and pay attention to school. So it made me focus in and really figure out what it was that I should be doing. Yeah. And so that's how I ended up here. And then it's been a blessing ever since. It's been amazing. Wow.
So there's like two things that stick out to me in this story. The first is we just joked about like being professionals now, but like being adults is hard. Like it is. It is
statement.
Difficult. And like sometimes I think, especially as younger kids are going to college, or there's kids in college listening to this right now, like we can worry so much about the prestige, but like when you get down to it, sometimes it really is like, hey, who offers me the most money? You know what I mean? Like it just, and it's like a tale as old as time in music a lot of times, like who's going to pay me the most to make music? So, and then the second thing was like how you can go through 4 years of training your voice. So you sing in high school, you sing in college, you had to put on this long recital at the end of, your senior year. And like how disheartening it can feel as a vocalist. And I can't speak for other instruments because I don't play them. I play trumpet, but like having your voice that's inside of you resonating from you feels so foreign to you and not be happy with it. And some of that's like, I think some of that is just a lack of like a regular practice routine, like you had said, or whatever, or like even as you're maturing, the voice changes. It's like wood on a guitar or violin. Like it just continues to mature and change. And if you don't practice constantly, you're going to like, you're not going to know your instrument.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's inside you, you know, like that's the even harder part. Like
you carry it with you all the time.
Yeah, you have to make this come out of you.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Who did you study with undergrad at BG?
Christopher Scholl.
He's the bee's knees, man.
Yeah,
Christopher
Scholl was good. He was
Yeah.
I gave him a lot. I apologize. I'm like, I'm so sorry for everything I put you through.
You know,
I put him through a lot.
Well, now the favor is being returned. You got 50 students, you know, like, so.
You know, I'm like, okay, now I know people. I know. I've done this before. I know this habit. I know this behavior.
That's right. You have to start like sending him flowers and chocolates and stuff to just say thank you for putting up with you for.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh. So cool.
I love it.
Daphne, you got any questions about his career path or?
Yeah. So like, what have you?
Now?
Yeah. Sorry, I had to move my screen there. So, you know, you had kind of touched on like there was this time where your voice didn't make you happy, and I hear Jeremy kind of saying that too. I'm not a vocalist. I'm an instrumentalist, but it was making me think about like the journey you must have. So, is there like is that the least favorite part of your musical journey? Has that been the thing that you have found most challenging, or is there something else in even just your current day-to-day activities that really kind of drives you up the wall or bothers you about music?
I think I don't know if it's related, absolutely related, but I'm not sure if it's like directly music, but probably, and I've seen this so much over the past 6 months of people saying is the imposter syndrome thing, where you just don't, you're like, am I worth putting this, you know, like, why should people listen to me? How come I have to? Yeah, you have these in and out thoughts of what makes me so, you know, how come I'm supposed to have this? Yeah. How come I'm supposed to do this? What makes me so great or in my, you know, to other people? And I mentioned to my friends who are musicians a lot, and you know, they try their best to understand. But I'm like, you know, being vulnerable is like such a huge part. And then you add that in, and it's just like this constant like battle with yourself. And people on the outside never see it. But musicians always feel it. It's, especially if you have, which is crazy because it's so backwards, because you can have the best support system, but you still feel like, why me? Like, how come, what makes me so great? Or how come, you know, I sound so good? Are you sure about that? Like, no, because there's always this, no, I'm flat here, or how come my breath isn't on, or maybe they don't want me, or maybe I don't deserve that. Like, no, I'm not going to apply for that, or I'm not going to audition for that because I'm not even that great. And so I think that's the biggest thing that many musicians fight through. I think that's been the hardest thing, is even when you do believe in it, in yourself and what you have to present, there's always that inner demon that's like, but there's somebody else that's better. You don't really know Italian that well. Your French isn't actually that good. You're like, oh no, maybe it isn't that good, but everybody else thinks it's good. Or, you know, this thing. And so you just go through this constant battle of a million things instead of just, here, you take it. This is what I'm giving. And if you don't want to accept it, you come over here and you do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you say something so important here, because, you know, as musicians, we're trained to kind of be perfectionists. And so we can be very nitpicky onto ourselves. Oh, I didn't hit the right note. My grip isn't very good here. This note I sang was flat. And then not only are you nitpicking yourself, but you're comparing yourself to other musicians. Because in this profession, there's so much comparison to person A and person B. So when you get in those cycles, what are the things and steps you take to get those thoughts out of your head and really get yourself in a place where you can perform the best musically? What are the steps and things you do?
Actually, I usually actually go back to, there's a couple of recordings that I may have that I at the time feel like were my best. Obviously not in the moment because you're in this negative space. So you go back, or I go back and I may find like programs of stuff that I've done. In the back, you see I have some posters of things that I've done. Actually, this one's BG right here. That's when we did Elixir of Love.
Yeah.
And so I remind myself of the hard work that I put in, the people who have supported me, the journey that I've gone through, and where I've come to not be in a negative place so much, like the place of 2013, that negative space. And besides that, I'll go, other than that, I'll go and listen to some of my like favorite old school singers, as we call them. I listen to Leontine Price, I listen to Pavarotti, or I listen to Franco Corelli, and they just give you, they amp you up. And because it was, their singing was so thrilling. It was just like, and the next thing I know, I'm like, okay, back to practice. I'm going to practice. I'm ready to sing. It may take, a day or two. And I do let myself go through, if I'm in a negative space, I don't want to, stop it and say, you don't deserve to feel like that. Why do you feel like that? I let myself go through the motions. If that's how I feel in the moment, that's how I'm feeling in the moment. I'm not going to deny myself that opportunity to get through, to work through it. So I'll give myself a day, maybe two, but it's usually just like an evening, and I'm like, what, I'm just gonna watch a movie. I don't want to do anything music related, and just let it, just dwell away, and then go to sleep, wake up, and try it again.
That's right. What do you do, Daphne, when you're in a funk? How do you get out of your funk?
Well, maybe this is sort of related, but as a music teacher, I keep something called the bad day box, and it's letters and notes from my students that like I've done something for them, or I've meant something to them, or the music I've shared with them has made a difference. And so, my bad day box is kind of my go-to thing as a teacher, because sometimes it's not, I've got the teacher side and the musician side, right? And generally speaking, as much as I love being a teacher, those are the days where I have the self-doubt probably more. And so I go to that bad day box and read those letters and read those things and say, see, it's not so bad. You're doing fine. You're doing fine, So that's me. When it's a musician thing, I do a lot like you, Chris. I'm like, stop nitpicking every little node that I hit on this marimba, or every little rung, whatever it is, and I'll go back and make myself. Sometimes I make myself listen to myself. I learned that at a young age because one of my favorite teachers from high school, Jeff Furby, shout out to Jeff Furby, he was recording me for solo ensemble, and I was just falling apart, and he was like, "You're going to sit here and listen to you because you do good. Knock it off." And he really kind of set me straight. And I kind of learned that lesson early, that sometimes you just need to go listen to yourself and see what you're putting in the world, and see that it's okay. So between the bad day box and doing that, and like you, Christopher, taking that break and watching Disney Plus, because sometimes you just got to do that. So all right, Jeremy, what do you do?
I don't know. I have, I listen to myself a lot, and I listen to myself for enjoyment when I can. And what I mean by that is like I'm lucky. Well, in college, I recorded every lesson. I don't know if you did that, Chris, yet, but like I had to listen to it and I had to critique it. And I got very comfortable with my voice, good and bad, and just whatever came with it. And I could hear myself getting better. So I hold on to that a lot. And I've really moved from and some of this I know for sure is the way that I'm wired is I don't really ever strive for perfection. I'm striving for getting better every time. And that staves off a lot of the that sucked type thing. Or like if I do, I have to say, well, it might have been really bad, but this one thing like turned out really well. Because,
yes,
art is like not a final destination. It's not a thing that we arrive at. It's something that we continue to produce. And so
amen.
I listen to myself a lot, and I try to do it without a critical ear and just learn to enjoy my voice. Because like you were kind of talking about, Christopher, if you don't like your own sound, it can be so difficult to have confidence to feel like you have something worth teaching other people. Mm-hmm. And some of that is like, my wife would probably call it cocky or full of myself. But I'm confident in two things. One, I'll get better every time if I'm actually practicing, like if I'm not just phoning it in. But two, like I've been gifted this and other people have not been. And so part of this is coming from even teaching, like, in our section, like in our world of general music education, we get so many kids that are not musically talented, and they're just there because they got put in the class, right? And so then when you start to see this, you start to see like, okay, we have such a unique gift that other people can't replicate and can't do. Mm-hmm. And so like, it sounds kind of like a bully to compare myself to high school students, but it is like, because I think it would be different if I was teaching like 50 kids who were all had musical competence, that were coming to be like, I'm here to be a musician, and you're always critiquing, like you're always listening for them to be better. And, I also survived undergrad without ever being told I should reconsider a new major, which I know many people were told by my voice teachers.
I've had I've heard some stories.
Yeah.
They have the same situation. I'm like, thank you for not doing that to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely heard that.
Yeah. So my imposter syndrome doesn't exist in music. It exists in other areas of my life for sure. And actually, I was talking last week. We did an episode on Black gospel music, and the one time that like imposter syndrome does creep in musically is around musicians of like church gospel, specifically like Black gospel music, because their guitar playing, their drumming is just on a whole nother level that I can't.
Go crazy.
Yeah, like it just happens so fast. And I could kind of pick it out, and I'm like, no, that's not happening. Good for you guys. Like I can't do that.
A true theory test right there. It's like, yes, I want you to transcribe all of this.
Yeah. No, pass. Like, what do you get when you put like, blues, jazz, and like super fast music, church music, so, yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think there's a lot of truth in what you both said of allowing yourself to feel those emotions and to feel okay. Because if you can't even connect with those emotions as a musician, like what other emotions are you trying to cut out of your life that you can't connect to? Right. So, just be open to it all, I suppose. It's, so. Yeah, that's cool. That's
all you can do. Yeah,
a little therapy session.
I do. I was like, I feel like we went to like church and therapy in one moment, and I was loving it. I was really enjoying that.
Yeah,
because there's also something very great about hearing other people's processes about how they deal with these things, and knowing that you're not the only person who feels like this in your profession. Because again, the imposter syndrome really creeps up, and everybody has insecurities, and everybody does. Even if we think they are, God's gift to music, they still probably are critiquing themselves and thinking that, they've got their days where they're not so good. So there's something very comforting about, even just hearing the process between you two and me, like comparing those notes and seeing that we're all in the same boat on that.
Right.
I like, I've been watching a lot of Leonard Bernstein conducting videos of like the West Side Story recording sessions for some reason.
Yeah.
And you watch like these world-class singers just like struggle and then get torn up. And you just realize like those people are really good. And there's tensions, but you almost have to treat it like a job in some aspects. Like you want to give the best performance, but at the end of the day, you're all working towards something beautiful. And there's going to be like a lot of emotions in there. But just to watch like this, I can't remember the tenor's name, but just get tore up.
I know exactly the video that you're talking about.
Yeah, and Leonard Bernstein just like, I've been like, somebody argued with him like with the wrong note. He's like, I was up until effing 4 o'clock in the morning writing this. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my god.
It's like, watch for your B3. Watch for B3. I'll count you in.
Oh my gosh! I'm like, that sounds like high school. You know what I mean? But it just it permeates for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, real quick, what's your practice routine look like? You know, like you're professional. So what's it look like?
To dwindle it down into something that won't take an hour, I pretty much start with stretching. If I haven't run in the beginning of the day, I'm usually pretty good to go after that. So I'll stretch and I'll start doing some buzzing, kind of get the voice going, get me in the headspace to sing. We've all been in those practice rooms where you get there and you're like, I really don't want to be here right now. Let's see. I get that going. I work on some scales, doing easy scales. Well, not easy, but simple scales, I'll say. And I'll get the voice kind of going. I'll usually do that for about 30 minutes. Do some legato exercises, some staccato exercises, get the voice kind of reach to its limits up top and go as far as my little tenor voice can go on the bottom, stretching it out. And then that's, usually about 30 to 40 minutes. And then I'll go in with rep. I usually plan, actually what I do, I go to a practice room that's downtown. My poor neighbors hear me belting all day long with these teenagers. So I'm like, I think I'm going to get out of the house to actually be able to sing. And so I'll be there for a couple of hours. And so the last hour, 15 minutes, I'll usually go through a couple of scores. I'll take and mark exactly what scores I'm going to use for that day, and try to have a detailed idea before I get there, especially since I pay for the space. I'm like, right. All 120 minutes of this time. And I'll go through and just do snippets, work on text. If I want to give myself a break, it's usually about an hour and 20 minutes in. I'm like, okay, that's cool out, it's the voice, so I can't, wail away forever. So I'll stop and I'll do some text things. And if it's English, I'll even work on text there, because singing English as, native as it is terrible to sing in.
Especially from the Midwest, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Like a little twang that comes in all the time. I'm trying. It's so funny because my church director, he's from not from London, he's from I think he's from London. And so he always makes fun of our Midwestern accents, and he's like, you guys sing this so funny. So I always hear his voice whenever I go to sing something that's in English. I'm like, okay, listen to Christian's voice. As soon as I can feel some semblance of a twang coming in. But I'll do that, and then at the end I'll kind of cool down just a little bit. So I'll just do lip trills, or I'll just hum and kind of, I guess, close my practice book in my mind for the day, and so that I can do something else after, so I have some type of balance and I don't leave and go back into working again. And so I try to, especially if it's the weekend, I try to I usually really get my big practice time in on Saturdays. I practice throughout the week, but it's usually like rhythms or something that's less singing, since I do so much already. And then so especially for the weekends, I'm like, nope, I'll leave out about 2 or 3, and I'm like, close the book, put the bag away, and see it again on Monday. Enjoy the weekend, unless I have to sing at church, obviously. Of course. But then Monday comes and I can start the wheel again.
Do you listen to music for fun?
I do-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, you questioned yourself. You thought about that a lot right there when you said that.
Do you mean are you questioning it because you listen to nothing that's like what you sing type music, or you just don't listen to music that much in general?
Everything that I listen to is probably because of my students. So if I listen to something, it's usually, if it's not late 90s or 2000s, like what I listened to in high school, then it's like musical theater, which I love, or opera. And so that's why the first question was so difficult. I'm like, man, what is my life outside of music?
Yeah.
Because, unless you like, go out, obviously outside of a pandemic and, you hear other stuff or if I'm in the car, I'll switch channel, but it's usually like musical theater station, med opera station, and a gospel station, and then maybe like some hip hop station. But I never know what's on there. I'm like, oh, switch. I'm like, I don't know what this music is.
Yeah.
All the students know, but I'm like, I have no clue who these people are.
That's funny. Yep.
It's usually musical theater or opera. That's like, my brain is just always going to that.
That's awesome. So, obviously, other people will not have this advantage like I do, being your Facebook friend. You this past month, you did a whole series on like Black opera singers, right? And
I did.
I thought that was cool and such a good resource to be able to follow along. And something we've been trying to do as music teachers is, again, to highlight voices that are not our own and to talk about issues that aren't normally talked about, because we have a podcast and we can do that, so
absolutely.
We have the power.
We have the power. And then I see you also you highlight Black opera in general, and part of the section is I have it in quotes, which I know is not fair in a lot of ways, and I put like music and activism and like highlighting Black classical music, and like what I can guess why that's important to you, but like if you would share why that's important, what do you think? What we could use more of, like who we should listen to and stuff like that.
It's it's coming to light so much more now. What Black singers at opera have been doing, just hadn't been given the space to do, in a full-time capacity. And so I love that now there's so much, like, for example, Florence Price, her estate actually has been, so the person who bought her estate, they have been finding all of this music, and it's been like this crazy, like, boom in everybody's kind of world. But a lot of Black singers have been singing her works for years, but the world just hadn't known about it, many of it. And so all this stuff is starting to come to light, and so a lot of music is starting to get kind of programmed. I know she has some symphony suites that I think I can't remember what orchestras, but there are a couple orchestras that have decided to program those. And then there's tons of opera singers who people have never known. A lot of people know Leontine Price. She, made a huge, even my grandmother talks about Leontine Price, like, oh yeah, I remember this and that. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, why didn't you ever tell me about her? Right. And Jesse Norman, and those are like the big names. But there was so many other, Leona Mitchell was another singer. Carolyn Blackwell, I actually didn't get to put her on my 28 days of Black opera singers. Sister Retta Jones is somebody who a lot of people don't know, and she was actually one of the first opera singers to really create some type of a career. But a lot of times she couldn't sing at many places because her prime was usually around, I think it was around 1930s, when she was really out and about. But so a lot of her work was kind of small concerts that her management will put together, and she actually didn't get to. There was a singer who kind of, I think their voices kind of resembled each other's, who was European, and so they started calling Sister Retta Jones the little. I can't. Oh man, what is the lady's name? It's the little. Oh, it's gonna pop in my head like as soon as we click in.
Of course,
it's always how it
like
goes.
The main thing. If you look up her name, actually, can I look it up real quick just to give you the actual spelling?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Let's see. So it's
what are they gonna do? Shut us down? No.
She said, "Shut us down."
Sister Retta Jones. Okay, so the spelling of her name is TTA Jones. And she was known as the Black Patty. That's what it was. There was an Italian singer named Adelina Patty. And they started calling her that. So she kind of lost her identity, really, because at some point that is what took over from her name. And so, so it happened to many singers. And, excuse me. And so, so it ended up expanding. There were all these singers that came after. And I'm trying to think of some other ones. Well, nowadays, Lawrence Brownlee, he was actually my idol, or is such a phenomenal singer. You have, oh my goodness, Isola Jones. She was from the 80s and 90s at the Met. Myra Merritt,
of course,
BGSU faculty member, fabulous lady. There's such a huge list. And I actually just found out, sorry, I'm like a talker. I'm like going.
Bring it on.
It's a podcast. You're supposed to talk.
I just found out this crazy story. So the singer Leona Mitchell, she was kind of like the baby to Kathleen Battle and Jesse Norman. They were all in at the Met at the same time, but Kathleen and Jesse were bigger names. So a lot of times Leona she got her work taken from her because they had to program certain Black singers for a certain amount of shows, pretty much. And so I just found out she just did a interview with a baritone, and she said that when she was at the Met, she actually stood up for Black opera male singers. They in the 90s they were not looking for them. They specifically did not want male Black opera singers. And so, it was in the early 90s. And so she actually stood up to the Met administration and mentioned that. And she lost tons of work because of that. And so for many, many years, and if you look up, I actually did this once. I had a now friend who lives in Amsterdam who wrote me, and he's like, hey, I really want to feature, he does Tenor Tuesday. And he was like, I really want to feature some Black tenors. And I had to think, and I'm like, I don't know any. Besides like George Shirley, who was like, he was like the tenor through the 50s and 60s, and well, really up until now. But and so I had to go to, thankfully Facebook has like all these forums, and so I'm like, hey, like, I don't want this to be like an ignorant question, but I really, I had a friend ask me this question, and I come to find out that I don't even know the answer to this, and they're like, no, it's an amazing question, and so I forwarded him the list that they presented, and then this interview happened, and I realized I put the two and two together, and I realized what was happening, but it was so underground. I mean, they made it so that you didn't even think about it, that there was no Black opera singers besides the three main sopranos. Kathleen Battle, Jesse Norman, Leona Mitchell, and obviously, Leotine. We have Martina Arroyo. She was pretty big, but I feel like she could have even been bigger. Grace Bumbry, Shirley Verrett, and they were kind of like the group. So out of from 1955 to, I'll say, the early 90s, there was probably 6 female Black opera singers who made it. I hate made it, but you know what I mean? That were full-time, that, got asked back, and probably 3 males that we know of. Simon Estes is another one. He's a bass baritone. But in the interview, she said that even he had to fight for the contracts that he got, because they didn't necessarily want him there, but he had the credibility. I mean, they couldn't say no. He was singing all over the world. So a lot of Black opera singers actually went to Europe to have careers, and a lot of them are still there. They are professors now at German institutes, or are still singing, because it was never, well, it is a thing, but the colorism wasn't as prominent there. Europe just wants good singers. They just want singers to come over and be able to sing.
Yeah.
Like, just come over, and if our crowd goes wild, you're getting hired back every season. They kind of measure it that way. But it was a different story in the States, and so a lot of companies are starting to hire diversity administration now, and so there's this bright light that's still in this tunnel, but the light is getting brighter for artists of color here in the States. So it's definitely something that is is making a lot of us happy, and it's great to see. Not even happy in the sense that, oh my goodness, I may have a chance to get a contract for New York City Opera now, or anything like that. It's just to see the gates open to anybody that just wants to perform and sing and express. That's what's so happy about this moment. If I never sing another opera, but I see a whole group of of Black opera singers come through in this next generation that take the stage for themselves and to represent for their culture. That's what makes me happy. That somebody has a chance, and it's not because it's not because of their skin color. It's because they put the work in.
They're just good,
and they give, they serve.
Yeah.
That's what it's always should be about. But history is history.
History is history. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's part of. We recognize, at least Daphne and I recognize it. We have a unique position of teaching this young generation, even before they go out into like the next world or into the next level of whatever musicianship or not that they're going to. So like, I don't. You're right. Like it's been a hot button issue in a lot of ways, or like not hot button. It's come to light. The lack of diversity in traditional Western music education and classical music and stuff. And it's funny you mentioned. I wrote down 2 names on the list that you have given us, so we're going to highlight some more people. But we just did the last episode was on Florence Price before this episode. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
And I love that you brought that up, because when you said it, like I just lit up, because I was like, I was just fangirling about how so cool it was that they found her music. Like I just was so like over the moon that we've discovered like this treasure trove. Like I feel like it was buried treasure. And I'm like, yay, let's listen to it all. So I was so excited to hear you bring that up for personal reasons.
I love it.
Oh man, that's good stuff. Is there anything, so like you, I don't know, let me ask this. So you are very active in highlighting all you just listed off like a ton of people, right? I have to go back and listen and write them all down. Like all these people that we should be paying attention to. Like, is that something that you're aware of much more now? Or like, is that something you think that you noticed as a kid in music? Or like, how does that kind of play?
The notice what exactly?
Well, like, okay, so like now, like, so the lack of diversity, I guess, just to put it, like, was that something that was?
Not really. Not at least in opera. I knew about it in an overall human sense.
Right.
I talked to my grandmother all the time. She was, she's passed, but she grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and that's where all of her siblings grew up. And so I would talk to her about, the civil rights movement and, growing up, in her 20s at the time, and how it affected her here, and talk to my other grandmother who actually got denied going to nursing school in Cincinnati because she was Black, and so she actually came to Chicago to go to an all-Black nursing school back in the 50s. And so I've always known about, obviously, that world. But in music, it was never, even my teachers never, I guess they wouldn't, because they wouldn't have known, but I guess they never, we were always incorporated. Everybody was, the characters always mixed up, and, everything was always just normal. There was nothing big about it.
Yeah.
Even in college, when I first started finding out who, all the opera singers were, there was never a thought on where are the Black opera singers. I just knew, kind of once you get into opera, you kind of know the big names anyway. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
Pavarotti. So,
Yeah.
my ringtone in college was him singing some aria.
Right.
And, you find out about Leontyne Price. And then throughout time, other artists start to, start having conversations. You're like, oh my goodness, have you listened to, Shirley Red sing Pache Pache Mio Dio? And I'm like, who? And then you find them, and then, it just leads you down a path of all these artists. And then, I thank God for social media, because now I'm finding out I'm starting to become friends with all these different colleagues of color that I probably would have never met or known of had we not had social media. And it probably wouldn't be a thing to even think to, connect dots or anything like that. So it's very much, I don't think it was anything that was necessarily held back, but since it is just something that's so unspoken or had been so unspoken about, it never popped up for anybody. Except for those, students who went to like HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. They know about it, a lot of these things. So I would learn from, some of the students that went there. I had a couple of friends that weren't necessarily music majors, but a lot of them take lessons, and, professors kind of give them as much information as they can from Black history background. And so I would, learn through that. And it was just kind of a trickle effect. And then, I find Met performances probably on YouTube. I don't think they had like their like whole app yet.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this singer and this dude, oh my goodness, who is George Shirley? Oh, he was a tenor, a Black tenor from the Met in the 50s and 60s. Wait, what?
Yeah.
And then you slowly start, piecing together. So I never felt like it never played a huge role, I guess. So I don't think of it in a negative way. Just learning like I learned anything else. It's more fascinating, obviously, because it's my ethnic history. But other than that, it was just cool. I'm gonna learn more and more. I'm gonna look up somebody else. And
just keep going. That's cool.
Yeah.
I kind of love too that like it's just like somebody told you listen to this person. That's exactly how we learn about music. Is your friends or people telling you go listen to this person, and like that. It's amazing. I love that tradition. Or, because we see that a lot of times in music history, that things get passed down, or, people were telling people, and people travel with music and stuff. And it's cool that even kind of in a modern time, we're using social media, but even in a modern time, it's people are telling each other what to check out and to see. And that's kind of spreading the word about more people and different people. And I just think that's really cool. A really cool part about what you just said there. I think that's neat.
Yeah. Social media, right? I got 28 days of singers that you highlighted, like it's just that easy, and I didn't have to like it's just all that information is out there. It's just
and that actually made me start to research, because I'm like, well, I don't want to put up the same people. Of course, add in the few people that people know, but I'm like, who are some others? And even it took research to do that. It was not, I couldn't just go to YouTube, and I did. Trust me, I tried. Black opera singers in the 60s. And it would be like, Leontyne Price and like Jesse Norman, and then like
page 3, page 4,
Asian Americans. And I'm like, nothing. And I'm like, the algorithm of YouTube is weird sometimes anyway. And so, it like caused me to research more. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, all these singers, and they look them up, and next thing you know, you're like, they're performing like at an opera house every year in Germany or something. And you're like, how do I not know this person?
Yeah. It's cool. So I love that's social media. Say what you want about it. I love it because it is just such. You can just go around the world, and find all kinds of crazy people or crazy performances that you never would have known.
Right.
So is there anywhere do you have a public persona out there for social media that people can follow you? Do you have a website you want to give out?
My website is www.tenorchristopherjackson.com. And my Instagram is Christopher Jackson Tenor. All right, Christopher Jackson Tenor. Yes. Cool. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to double check that. I always confuse myself. I'm like, how come I couldn't just have the same order everywhere?
That's right. That's
you always know.
Exactly. Yeah. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. My email is Tenor Christopher Jackson, and my Instagram is Tenor Christopher Jackson. My website, not my email, my website.
Okay, so So I'm gonna put these in the show notes so people can just click on it. So that'll probably be the easiest.
Perfect.
They don't have to can find it. But so ton of Christopher Jackson, right?
Yes.
Got it.
Website and IG. Yeah.
Do you have some performances of yourself on these platforms?
I do.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. My Instagram, I've definitely have many things random. I think I actually need to go back and clean it up. I'm pretty sure there's like thousands, so many performances. And then I do have a YouTube. I'm trying to get the name changed. Right now it's Cincinnati Tenor, but that was my 2008. I'm going to be an opera star.
I was going to say, that dated you right there. I knew. I knew. But that's okay. That's okay.
Oh gosh.
We all have it. So
it seems just like yesterday.
Good.
Don't feel bad about it. It was just last year.
That's right.
Exactly. Sometimes it feels like that.
That's the truth.
And I have a lot of stuff up on YouTube.
Awesome. All right, well, Christopher, we talked forever, and I think we could just keep talking. So I think we'll bring you back on sometime.
You're
it's
such
totally
a joy.
Cool.
Absolutely.
You're such a joy. Thank you for sharing with us today. This was so nice.
Absolutely, my play anytime.
Yeah.
I love it. To get to talk to adults about music.
Right. That's how we look at it, right?
That's exactly how Jeremy and I look at it every week. We get a couple minutes to talk about stuff with grown-ups that we want to geek out on. We're total nerds about this stuff.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Well, so Christopher, thanks for joining us and sharing your experience, because it's different than both of ours, just like we're both different from each other. And just, it's cool, man. It's cool to see how people have taken their musical journey, and like you have excelled at it to the point where you're teaching many students and you got degrees, and people say you're good, and you are good. So I'm going to tell you that, and you can believe it or not.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And for you listener, if you want, we're on Twitter at OHVA Music. You can find me on Twitter at Jeremy P. England. And then our website is anchor.fm/OHVA Music. And we'll put all of Christopher's links in the show notes as well. So you can go follow his Instagram and check him out on his website. And if you're into the Chicago area, get a lesson with him, right? And be a good singer.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll talk to you all next week. See you guys later.
Bye.